Hey, how was the first recording ever made? Like, how did people capture sounds back then?
That's a super cool question. Imagine you're at a birthday party and everyone's singing happy birthday, but as soon as it ends, poof, the sound just disappears into the air. Thomas Edison, this clever inventor guy in the 1800s, got tired of that. He thought, what if we could save sounds forever, like how a photograph traps a picture? He pictured voices and music getting stuck, ready to play any time.
But sounds are invisible. They vanish so fast. How could anyone trap something you can't even see?
Exactly. That's the tricky part Edison wrestled with. See, sounds aren't really magic. They're like wiggly waves bouncing through the air. When you talk, your voice makes the air vibrate, pushing tiny bits back and forth super quick. Edison figured if he could catch those vibrations, like scratching a pattern into something soft, he could keep them safe. It was like drawing a map of the sound waves so they wouldn't get lost.
Vibrations in the air? That makes sense. Like when I blow on a blade of grass and it whistles. So he wanted to etch them? You mean like carving little lines?
Yep, just like that. Edison loved the idea of preserving moments. Think of hearing your grandma's laugh years after she's gone, or replaying a favorite song without a band there. He knew photos used light to etch images on metal plates, so why not do something similar for sound? But airwaves are speedy and squishy, not solid like light. He needed a way to turn those invisible jiggles into something you could touch and hold on to.
Wow, that sounds hard. Like trying to catch a cloud in a jar. Did he have any wild ideas at first?
Oh, he did. Edison was always tinkering in his workshop, surrounded by wires and gadgets. One day, while messing with telegraphs, those old machines that sent messages over wires, he noticed how electricity could carry signals far away. That sparked it. If wires could record dots and dashes of code, maybe something could record voice waves too. He dreamed of a device that would mimic the ear, grabbing those vibrations before they faded. No more letting great noises slip away.
I get it. Sounds are waves, and he wanted to save them like a drawing. But how would he actually build something to do that?
Great point, because imagining it is one thing, but making it real, that's where the fun and the mess begins. He started sketching plans for a machine that could handle those wiggly waves without letting them escape.
Sketching plans? Tell me more about what he came up with. Like, what did the machine look like?
All right, picture this. Edison's workshop was like a kid's ultimate playroom, but with steam and sparks instead of toys. He didn't want anything fancy at first, just something quick to test his big idea. So he grabbed a plain wooden cylinder, about the size of a soup can, and wrapped it snugly in tinfoil. Yeah, that shiny stuff from the kitchen. It was soft enough to scratch into, but tough enough to hold the marks. Doesn't sound high-tech, does it? More like a homemade drum.
Tinfoil? That seems kind of flimsy. Like it might rip if you breathed on it wrong. And a wooden cylinder? The whole thing must have looked like a goofy toy someone forgot to finish.
Ha! You're spot on. It did look pretty silly at first glance. Edison's friends probably thought he was joking when he showed them this contraption. But he knew, flimsy or not, it had to spin smoothly to catch those sound waves without blurring them. He attached a simple crank handle to one end, like on an old fishing reel, so you could turn it by hand. No batteries or motors back then, just good old muscle power to make it go round and round at just the right speed.
Okay, spinning cylinder with tinfoil. I can imagine that part. But how did he make sure the vibrations actually stuck to it?
That's where the clever bits come in. He added a big horn, kind of like a megaphone made of metal, flared out wide at the open end to scoop up your voice. Inside the narrow part of the horn, there's a thin diaphragm, a super light sheet, almost like waxed paper stretched tight. When sound hits it, that diaphragm jiggles just like your eardrum does when you hear music. Attached right to the middle of the diaphragm is a sharp little needle, pointy as a pencil tip but way smaller.
A needle on a wiggly sheet. That sounds delicate. Like if you yell too loud, it might poke right through the tinfoil.
It was delicate, for sure. Edison had to be gentle during tests, or the whole setup could wobble and mess up. But the idea was smart. As the diaphragm vibrates from your voice, the needle dances up and down, scratching tiny grooves into the soft tinfoil as the cylinder turns. Those scratches aren't random. They're an exact squiggly map of the sound waves, deeper and shallower bumps following the pitch and volume. He called the whole machine a phonograph, from Greek words meaning sound writer. Built it in just a few days with help from his team, using stuff he had lying around. No big factory needed.
Phonograph. Cool name. So it's like the needle's drawing the sound right onto the foil while it spins. But wouldn't the scratches get all jumbled if you turn it too fast or slow?
Good catch. Speed was key. Edison figured out that a steady, even turn, about 60 to 120 grooves per inch, kept everything clear, like drawing smooth lines instead of scribbles. He tested it over and over, adjusting the horn shape to focus the voice better, and the needle's sharpness so it etched without tearing. One time he even used a chicken feather for a softer touch, before settling on metal. It wasn't perfect. Tinfoil wore out after a play or two, but for a first try, it was magic. Imagine holding this homemade gadget and realizing you'd just bottled up a voice.
Bottled up? Yeah, that's awesome. So now that he built it, how would he get a voice to actually go into that horn and start the scratching?
Ah, that's the exciting step, getting the voice to dance with the machine. Edison would lean in close and speak right into the wide mouth of that horn, saying something simple like, "Mary had a little lamb," to test it. Your voice travels through the air as those invisible waves, but the horn acts like a big ear, funneling and amplifying them so they're not lost in the room's noise. It's like shouting into a paper towel tube to make your words boom louder for a friend across the playground.
Funneling the waves? Okay, but voices can be pretty quiet sometimes. Wouldn't they just fade away before hitting the diaphragm thing you mentioned?
Totally valid worry. Edison thought the same at first. A whisper might seem too soft to budge anything, but the horn's shape concentrates the sound waves, making even a gentle voice push harder on the diaphragm. That thin sheet I told you about? It's super sensitive, vibrating back and forth thousands of times a second as the waves hit it. Picture it like a drum skin in a tiny band, quivering to every note you sing. Those fast wiggles from high-pitched sounds or slow ones from deep voices all get captured faithfully.
Thousands of times? Whoa, that needle must be shaking like crazy then. How does it not just fly off or miss the quick parts?
It was a challenge. Edison worried the needle couldn't keep up with those speedy jiggles, especially for fast talking or music. But since the needle is right in the center of the diaphragm, it mirrors every move perfectly, like a shadow puppet, following the main figure's every twitch. As you speak into the horn, the diaphragm pushes the needle up and down against the spinning tinfoil cylinder. The pointy tip digs in just enough to carve a spiral groove, starting shallow for soft sounds and digging deeper for loud ones. It's not a straight line. The groove wiggles side to side, too, mapping out the exact rhythm and tone, like a fingerprint of your voice etched in metal.
A fingerprint of sound? That's neat. So if I said hello all breathy and quiet, the groove would be super light. But if I yelled it, it'd be a big, deep scratch?
Exactly. Edison tested with different volumes to see. For a soft hello, the vibrations are gentle, so the needle barely nicks the foil. A faint, narrow wiggle. Yell it, and whoosh, the diaphragm slams harder, carving a bold, bumpy trench. He even tried singing a tune, watching how high notes made the groove zigzag tighter and faster. One funny story, during a test, his assistant got too excited and shouted a joke, and the needle gouged right through the foil. They had to patch it with more tin foil, but it showed how the whole setup turned invisible air pushes into touchable marks. No electricity needed, just your breath and a steady hand on the crank to keep the cylinder rolling at the right pace.
Patching with tinfoil sounds like a messy science project. I bet it felt weird hearing your own scratches turn back into words later. But do those little grooves actually hold enough to bring the sound alive again?
Oh, they do, in a way that blew everyone's minds. But let's see how that magic reversal worked.
Magic reversal? Yeah, tell me, how did turning that crank bring the scratches back to life?
Picture this. After etching those wiggly grooves, Edison lifts the needle gently off the tinfoil, like pausing a game. Then, to play it back, he resets everything. The cylinder's still wrapped in its shiny foil, grooves all mapped out. He grabs the crank handle and starts turning it the same steady way, spinning the cylinder under the needle again. No speaking this time, the machine's doing the talking. The pointy needle, now acting like a explorer's finger, slides into that same spiral groove and follows every bump and dip exactly as it was carved.
Follows the groove? So it's like tracing a drawing with your finger to remember the shape?
Spot on. As the cylinder turns, those tiny ups and downs in the tinfoil push and pull on the needle, making it wiggle just like it did when recording. That jiggle shakes the diaphragm connected to it, the same thin sheet that caught your voice before. Now the vibrations travel out through the horn, but reversed. Instead of funneling sound in, it's blasting the recreated waves out into the air. You hear a faint echo of the original words, tinny and scratchy, but there. Your voice coming back from the foil.
Whoa, so the grooves are like a recipe? The needle reads them and bakes the sound right back up?
Love that. Yeah, a secret recipe for sound. Edison cranked it slowly at first, holding his breath, and out came, "Mary had a little lamb," mumbled but real. The horn amplified those weak vibrations, turning tiny shakes into something you could hear across the room. It wasn't loud like a radio today, more like whispering through a tin can phone, but it proved the trick worked. Those grooves, even if super small, thinner than a hair, held enough detail to capture the rise and fall of words, the lilt in a laugh.
But the grooves are so tiny. Wouldn't they just make a bunch of noise, like scratching a chalkboard? Or get all mixed up and distort the voice?
That's what Edison's team wondered too. Those scratches looked messy under a magnifying glass, like a kid's wild doodles. And yeah, sometimes the sound did warp a bit, fuzzy around the edges if the crank sped up or slowed down. But if you turned it just right, matching the recording speed, the needle traced faithfully, recreating the exact pattern of air wiggles. No vanishing act. The vibrations rebuilt the sound wave by wave, popping out of the horn clear enough to recognize. One test had Edison recording a friend's joke, and when it played back, everyone clapped, even if it sounded like talking underwater.
Underwater talking? That's funny. I guess it wasn't crystal clear, but still amazing for foil and a needle.
Totally amazing, especially since it was 1877. No computers or lasers, just clever mechanics. The playback showed sound could be stored and revived, opening doors to records, tapes, even today's apps. But you're right to wonder about glitches. The tinfoil stretched and tore easily after a few spins, grooves wearing flat like an erased drawing.
Wearing out? So why didn't it work perfectly every time then? Like always loud and perfect?
Ah, good question. It didn't, because the materials were basic. Tinfoil was cheap but fragile. After one or two plays, the grooves smoothed out and the voice faded to a mumble. The needle could snag if not sharp enough, or the cylinder wobble if the crank wasn't steady, turning words to garble. Edison's workshop was dusty and bumpy, so vibrations from footsteps messed with the delicate setup. Plus, early horns were small, so playback was quiet. You had to lean in close, and background noises like creaky floors snuck in. He tried beeswax coatings for durability, but tinfoil was the quick fix. Still, those flaws didn't stop the wow factor. It sparked a sound revolution, proving voices could live on.
Flaws and all, it changed everything. I get it now. Cranking just retraced the map, shaking the horn to free the trapped sounds. No wonder it blew minds back then.
You nailed it, kiddo. From that simple spin, we got a world full of saved songs and stories. What a wild ride Edison's phonograph started. Makes you appreciate every tune you hear, right?